Hello and welcome to Hispanic Agenda, Washington's only bilingual news program. I'm Alejandro Negron. Thank you for watching. On the agenda today, the president's plans to ease deportation restrictions for some undocumented immigrants have been put on hold after a decision by a federal judge in Texas. Today, we'll get legal analysis from attorney Joseph Maloof and later reaction from immigration reform activists. Then, the politics of the decision with our political panel. But first, here's Joe Johns.
Less than 2 days before the government was going to start taking applications for immigrant children who want protection from deportation, a huge last-minute setback. A Texas federal judge brings the administration's new deferred enforcement policies that could affect up to 5 million people to a screeching halt, at least temporarily. Late today, President Obama said the administration would comply with the court's decision blocking implementation of his new policies, but made clear that the legal fight is not over.
I disagree with the Texas judge's ruling, and the Justice Department will appeal.
Judge Andrew Hannon said Homeland Security Secretary Jay Johnson did not follow the law and administrative rules when he launched the new policies on deferred enforcement late last year. Hannon wrote, "The public interest factor that weighs the heaviest is ensuring that actions of the executive branch comply with this country's laws and its Constitution." The judge is an appointee of former President George W. Bush and a sharp critic of President Obama's policies. Republican Texas Governor Greg Abbott filed the lawsuit on behalf of his and 25 other states.
In Texas, we will not sit idly by while the president ignores the law and fails to secure the border.
The White House is fighting this battle on two fronts. A face-off with Republicans in Congress over the policies could affect funding for the Homeland Security Department. The ruling means people who are planning on filing for deferred action on immigration for their children starting on Wednesday will have to wait.
These people who were so excited in November, now they can gather their papers together, but they can't participate in the program.
And the president's supporters were urging immigrants who want to change their status to use the time the case is in the courts to get their paperwork together.
Get your birth certificates. I want you to get your passports up to date. I want you to get all your documentation to prove that you've been here.
And we're joined now by Joseph Maloof, attorney and legal analyst. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to have you on.
It's a pleasure
as
to be
usual.
here.
If you could please, and we've talked about this before, we've talked about this court case about a month ago. Right. If you could put us up to date as to what were these 26 states arguing for in the lawsuit. If you can give us an overview of the lawsuit.
In summary, they were asking the court to find that President Obama did not have the authority to basically authorize plus 4 million plus people to stay in the country legally without an act of Congress.
And what was their argument?
The legal technical argument is that the president was violating the Take Care Clause.
What is the Take Care Clause?
It's the clause that you hear when the president takes oath of office that he will faithfully execute the laws of the United States. So his job, in essence, is to make sure the laws are followed. The argument is that the president is condoning allowing over 4 million people to break the law, and therefore he's violating the Take Care Clause.
Now, let me ask you about this ruling on Tuesday.
Right.
Technically, legally speaking, why can't the president fight that ruling or get an appeal or seek one on that ruling? Instead, he's waiting to see what happens for a final ruling. Why is that?
Because it's a temporary ruling. It's basically an injunction. And it asks the 26 states, it tells the 26 states, and the president has taken that for everybody in the country, that not to implement the new laws, the new regulations the president promulgated through Homeland Security until such time as there has been a full adjudication on all these issues. And that is a problem because it's putting everything on hold, and it may not necessarily work.
But some in the community are saying, why is the president suspending everything? He should fight it right now instead of waiting to a final decision. I'm sure there's some legal strategy here.
Well, there has to be, and you hope there is one, because the president at this point has to respond. He has to go to the Court of Appeals and say, you need to suspend the suspension.
Okay.
You need to find that there is no irreparable harm. In other words, the 26 states told the judge that if this law is implemented, that their expenses and injuries to the states would be significant.
Is it that the administration sees that Judge Andrew Hanen, after he sees the evidence, which is, I guess, what's next, won't be able to rule against the executive action?
Correct.
And therefore, that's why they're waiting.
That's correct.
That could be okay.
I think that the merits of the case, and they use a technical argument, the Administrative Procedures Act was not followed, and that basically requires administrative agencies like Homeland Security to make announcements, send notices, and allow an opportunity for comment before implementing a significant or substantive rule. They're arguing that allowing over 4 million undocumented people to stay with these permits is a rule, a substantive rule, and they needed to go through that procedure.
Okay.
That's the technical argument the judge used.
Now, let me also ask you about this U.S. District Judge, Andrew Hanen. Many accusations are being heard in the media about he's an activist, he's an anti-Obama type. What do you know about this judge?
Well, I do think that, he was named by a Republican president,
George W.
Bush, and clearly he has expressed publicly his objections over President Obama and his policies. And interestingly, he accuses the president of violating his oath. And he's could be considered violating his oath. In a sense, when you use politics and inject it into a legal decision, that is not what a judge is supposed to do.
And you believe that his decision is based on politics and not
given
law.
the fact that over 52 times in the past, presidents have passed executive orders regarding immigration, that this
but
is a political
isn't the argument, and let me play devil's advocate here, that never before has an executive action on immigration has impacted as many people as these executive actions?
Well, this executive action it's not amnesty, and it isn't, just because the numbers are larger doesn't necessarily mean that the act is illegal. And really, we're looking at the act and the discretion. And there is no bigger discretion as president to decide who gets deported and who doesn't. That's the discretion that every president has had, and that's what they're attacking.
And it doesn't matter what the numbers are.
Doesn't matter what the numbers. The act is what we need to focus on.
Gotcha. Talking law with Joseph Maloof. Attorney Joseph Maloof, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Alejandro.
All right, when we come back, how are immigration reform activists responding to the setback? And if you or a family member were set to apply for deportation relief this week, what do you need to know? Carecen's legal director, Andrea Rodriguez, joins me next on Hispanic Agenda. Welcome back to Hispanic Agenda. I'm Alejandro Negron. Just hours before the application period was set to begin for DACA, the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, a federal judge in Texas halted the implementation of it. How will immigration reform advocates respond, and what to do if you or a loved one were one of the many set to apply for deportation relief? Let's ask Andrea Rodriguez, legal director at Carecen, a pro-immigration community organization. Andrea, it's a pleasure to have you on Hispanic Agenda.
Thank you very much, Alejandro.
First, let me ask you, as legal director of Carecen, a pro-immigrant organization such as Carecen, what was your initial reaction to this ruling by the judge in Texas?
No doubt that there was some disappointment because the opportunity to benefit from deferred action, would create an immense impact on the community where youth, which would be the first phase of those that would be eligible, would be able to obtain work permits and better the quality of their lives, right? But at the same time, it was, I have to admit, a bit expected because we knew that the decision was pending, and that the likelihood of this particular judge to issue an order halting the implementation was very high.
You understand, or you understood, that this judge is an activist? That's what some are saying. Some are an activist judge.
Yes,
Do you agree?
He has been very vocal about his disagreement with executive action and with the implementation of DACA the first time it was implemented in 2012. So It came to no surprise.
Now, as a legal expert, because you're also an attorney, what's your legal opinion as to what he ruled on?
I disagree with the ruling. I felt that it was very narrowly tailored. It was based on, in part, on a violation of the Administrative Procedures Act, which I feel is that does not apply in this situation, because this was not a regulation. In fact, this was a policy, and what the president was going to implement is deferred action, which was a policy that had already been long established, where there was already a procedure that had been created decades ago. Also, the fact that he looked at the evidence very narrowly. So, for example, looked at the potential damages to the states where they would incur expenses issuing driver's license, or in the schools. So, for example, these expenses would already exist. So, for example, this already applies to people that are here.
And there are fees that are paid to get driver's licenses.
There are fees that are paid to get the
Right.
driver's license, and
Right.
so now we're in the status quo, where we have a situation where we are dealing with a population that is already here, undocumented. They aren't going anywhere,
Sure.
and we have drivers that are potentially driving without licenses, uninsured.
Sure.
So it also creates a burden to the safety, the general safety.
Of everyone, whether you're here
everyone.
documented or not. Now, let me ask you, who's affected by this decision? And this is an important question, I guess, for our viewers. If you have a family member, if you happen you wanted to apply for DACA, is everyone who could potentially apply for DACA affected by this?
That's a great question. So those who aren't affected by this injunction are the potential applicants for DACA in the first round. So those folks that were eligible for DACA in 2012 and that were present in the United States before June 15, 2007 are still eligible to apply for the benefits under deferred action.
And they can continue to apply then.
Exactly.
Okay.
Those who are not able to apply are those that could be eligible for DACA, but entered after June 15, 2007. So this is what's called the expanded DACA, or DACA 2.
So whoever could potentially benefit from the expansion, those cannot apply.
Exactly. And also those that would be eligible for DAPA, parents of U.S. citizens and residents, where it was expected that the application period would open around May. So those are the folks that would not be able to apply under this order.
Now, let me ask you about the reaction that you're getting at your office, your clients. What are they saying about what happened?
Well, obviously, again, there's also disappointment too. But at the same time, they're hopeful, and we are hopeful that in the long run, the courts will find that this is an action that is legal, and that the application will open. Now, it will be in a matter of months. So, we look at it from the perspective that this is a delay.
Okay.
And this also can benefit some folks in that they have more time to prepare, because the documentation that is required to prove eligibility is immense.
Hey, you have to look at the positive in everything, I guess.
You do,
All
yes.
right. Andrea Rodriguez, Legal Director at Carecen, thank you so much.
Thank you.
For your time. All right, when we come back, how will the decision to halt the president's executive actions on immigration affect the debate here in Washington on issues such as funding for the Department of Homeland Security? The political panel is next. Welcome back to Hispanic Agenda. I'm Alejandro Negron, and now our political panel. Jose Suero is the editor of the progressive MetroDiversity.com, and Julie Pino is with the conservative Libre Initiative. Welcome both to Hispanic Agenda. It's a pleasure to have you both.
Alejandro.
So we've been talking a lot about this decision by this U.S. district judge in Texas affecting the president's actions on immigration. I want to get to the politics of it, and how do you think it's going to impact, for example, the debate on the funding for the Department of Homeland Security, since apparently Republicans or conservatives are emboldened by this decision by the judge. What effect do you think it will have? I'll start with Jose Suero.
Well, I think this is a case of the gang that couldn't shoot straight. They keep shooting themselves in the foot. They're going to be blamed for a shutdown with DHS. And what happened with the Brownsville judge is going to have repercussions in 2016. What kind of strategy is this for the Republicans with the Latino community? So suppress their vote? Because the Latino community is going to be decisive in 16, and they're doing everything they can to piss them off.
Julie Pino.
Look, I think there's no doubt that immigration reform is a no-brainer. But at the end of the day, this is a democracy in these states, and that's not just Brownsville. It's 26 states that have also attach themselves to this idea that I can sue the president for not upholding the Constitution. You know, in their mind, he, with an executive order, did not uphold the Constitution and has overreached. And I think, you know, I always say this, and the Latino community needs to get very smart about this, because the Democrats and the White House had every opportunity to pass immigration reform when they had full control of the House and the Congress. They didn't do it because it's political posturing, and the president held on to his executive order before the elections.
But at the same time,
he knew that he was going to poke the Republicans in the eye by passing an executive order. He knew this was going to delay the process. Okay. Hispanic community needs to really pressure the president to work with Congress and pass a bilateral solution to immigration reform.
Let's talk about the Hispanic community. Representative Luis Gutierrez has said that the Hispanic vote, or the Latino community, is going to become militant in their support for whoever supports immigration reform, which at this moment is the Democrats, not necessarily the Republicans. What effect do you think it will have on the 2016 presidential election?
It'll have an enormous effect. This business that Judy wants us to believe that this is all about being legal. You know,
it's not.
Well, but the point is, there's a reality here. This is going on a 50 million people community. People vote in Colorado and Nevada, in Florida, in your Florida. People are not going to vote for the Republicans, and the militancy that Luis Gutierrez is talking about is, you watch Voto Latino, watch the get out the vote. The Latinos are going to vote. Even in Texas, they're going to have a problem.
And they're
the Brownsville judge,
these decisions to the Republicans next. Isn't that a problem for the right?
Look, I happen to disagree to a certain extent with Jose, because if last November was any evidence of how the people feel about the way this administration and the Democrats are running the country, then I wouldn't be too concerned about that. I do think that immigration reform...
It's a different electorate during the midterm election and the presidential one.
No, I don't. I'm not disagreeing with you that immigration reform needs to pass. I do think it needs to pass bilaterally, not unilaterally.
But who's blocking it? You're saying Congress needs to deal with it. Who in Congress is saying no?
I'm saying the
president.
It's
the Republicans.
No, I'm saying the president should work with Congress. You don't go around poking people in the eye.
For immigration reform.
So
you're suggesting immigration reform is going to pass a Republican-controlled Congress?
I think immigration reform should pass, as I said before, bilaterally. I think the president should go ahead and have a conversation with Congress rather than doing it by executive order.
Let me ask you this, Judy.
Which is not permanent, by the way.
Let's say the judge's decision stands. Many legal experts don't believe it will, but let's say it stands. Does this force Republicans to pass immigration reform in Congress?
I think it'll start a conversation to actually do something, and I think the Republicans should do something. Okay. At no point in time have I said that they shouldn't do something.
They're not going to do anything.
All right, guys, I have to go.
Judy.
We're out of time, and we'll
time will tell.
Thank you. When we come back, the signature Latino business event in the city is just around the corner. The Greater Washington Hispanic Chamber of Commerce Business Expo. Angela Franco, President and CEO of the Chamber, joins me next on Hispanic Agenda. Welcome back to Hispanic Agenda. I'm Alejandro Negron. It's a pleasure to have on Hispanic Agenda Angela Franco, is the president and CEO of the Greater Washington Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, and we're getting ready for this huge event, which is the Business Expo, the biggest event for Hispanic business in the city. Welcome to Hispanic Agenda.
Thank you so much for inviting us. Well, this year the Expo is March 24th at the Convention Center, and we're adding a day basically for international.
So international business.
for international business. So we're going to talk about how to export and import, and we're going to give an overview of the economy in Latin America and the local economy.
I love that. This is an opportunity for people to find out how to do business in Latin America, whether you're a Latino business owner or not.
Absolutely. That applies to everybody. And there's a lot of interest and there's a lot of possibilities in Latin America. And sometimes people get intimidated because they really don't know or don't understand, or the language barrier,
Sure.
or many things. But we're going to make it very simple, easy, great speakers, so it's a great opportunity.
I would imagine that trade agreements will be discussed and how to best practices to do business in Latin America.
We're going to include some basic information about trade and really what are the benefits for American companies to export to Latin America. And also we're going to bring companies. There are some companies that are coming from Latin America to exhibit here on the agro side and on the technology side.
All right, that's on the 25th. That's the International
That's
Business
international.
Symposium. Now, on the 24th, we have the Expo.
So on
over
the
2,000
24th,
people are expected
yes,
to show.
We're expecting over 2,000 people. We're having a very aggressive marketing campaign, and really we have all resources for Hispanic businesses. Either if you're a startup or a company that wants to get certified, or if you want to grow and do business with corporate America and the federal government, you will find the resources available there.
All right, you don't want to miss it. March 24th and 25th. For more info, you can go to
GWHCC.org.
You got it. Angela Franco, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
And wish you all the success in the world. All right, we don't have any time for more, but we'll be back next week here on News Channel 8, 6 o'clock and 9 p.m. on Saturdays.